Good day everyone, I am your teacher, Ma'am Juliet H. Ricasada. Today we will discuss the measures of central tendency for group data. So together, let's discover the wonderful world of mathematics. Before we start, I have some health tips and reminders for you. First, always wash your hands. Wear your mask, and eat your greens because health is wealth. The objectives are the following. First, determine the steps in computing for the mean, median, and mode of group data. Second, solve for the mean, median, and mode of the given group data. And appreciate the value of accumulated learnings. Let's have a quick review of our previous lesson. Are you ready? Let's start. Get your pen and paper, and I want you to choose the letter of the correct answer. Question number 1. What measure of central tendency is more popularly known as the average? Is it A, mean, B, median, or C, mode? And the correct answer is letter A, mean. Question number 2. What measure of central tendency is obtained by determining the most frequent score that appeared in the dataset? Is it A, mean, B, median, or C, mode? The correct answer is letter C, mode. Let's have the question number 3. What measure of central tendency refers to the middle number in the arranged dataset? Is it A, mean, B, median, or C, mode? The answer is B, median. That's the middle number. Did you get it? Nice work. Question number 4. What is the formula to be used in getting the mean of a dataset? Is it A, sum of the scores divided by the number of scores, or B, n plus 1 all over 2? And the correct answer is A. Take note of this. Did you get it also? Very good. Last question. In this dataset, 2, 4, 5, 6, 6, what is the median? Is it A5, B6, or C, none? The correct answer is A5 because that is the middle value. Median means the middle value of the arranged dataset. So 5 is the middle number or the median. Did you get it also? Good work! Now let's have some vocabulary words that we are going to encounter on this session. First is group data. What do we mean by this? This pertains to the data that has been ordered and sorted into groups called classes, often displayed in a frequency table. Another term is the frequency distribution table or the frequency table. They are just the same. So this means that it is a chart that summarizes values and their frequency. Some examples are this. Last time you have discussed this frequency distribution table wherein the first column contains the class intervals. The second column are the tally, where in the third column here are the frequencies. So these steps, the tally marks, are used when you are doing or making the frequency table. But on this session, you will encounter such table or frequency table, distribution table with two columns only. So on the first column, as usual, you will get or see the class intervals. While on the second column, you will see the frequencies, the number of occurrence of each score. So these are the terms that we are going to commonly encounter on this session. On this session, for the measures of central tendency for group data, we also have three: the mean, median, and mode. So these are the symbols that we are going to use to represent mean. We call this as the X bar. For the median, we will use the X tilde, the one we use when we are writing Enye, right? While for the mode, we are going to use X hat. Okay, you get it? Good. Let's start now with the mean, which is most popularly known as the average. The formula in computing for the mean of group data is this. So we read this as the symbol, the sigma sign, the summation of F times X sub M all over N. So where these symbols represent the following. The X bar, of course, is the mean, F is the frequency, X sub M is the class mark, and N is the sum of frequencies. Let's dig deeper on this with the next example. Okay, for our example, calculate for the mean score of 50 students in a math quiz. So this is the data in frequency distribution table already. So it has two columns. As you can see, the first column pertains to the score, which is written in interval form. So we have 90 to 94, 85 to 89, 80 to 84, 75 to 79, 70 to 74. Again, this pertains to the score, okay? The scores of the students. While on the second column, we can see the frequency tells us the number of students that got the scores from 90 to 94. There are 7 students who got that score. For 85 to 89, there were 13 students who got the score. 16 students got a score between 80 to 84. While 8 students got a score of 75 to 79, and 6 students got a score from 70 to 74. So how are we going to get for the mean of this data? First, we have to find the midpoint or class mark of each class or category by getting the average of the class intervals, which we have this formula. LL means the lower limit plus the upper limit divided by 2. So what do we mean by that? Why, first, we have to add another column and we have to label it as class mark. Okay, so we have to fill up this column by using this formula. So that's lower limit. So which are the lower limits? These numbers on the first entry, on our scores, the lower limit. Okay, and then the upper limits are this. Okay, these are the upper limits. So again, what do you have to do with them? You have to add the lower and the upper limits, and then you have to divide by 2 to get the value of the class marks. Let's start. So we have 90 and 94. So we have to add them. 90 plus 94 like this, and then we divide it by 2. So the total would be 184, and when we divide it by 2, we'll get 92. So we have to write it on the first column here. Okay, the first row on our third column. Okay, next, let's proceed to the next class mark, getting the sum of the next class intervals, the lower and the upper limit, we have 85 plus 89, and we have to divide it by 2. That's 174 divided by 2. So that would give us 87. That's the second class mark. Next, let's proceed to the third class mark. So we have to focus our attention on the lower limit and the upper limit of the third class interval. So we have to add them. 80 and 84 divided by 2 will get 164 divided by 2. Finally, we will get 82 as our third class mark. The middle number, when we say class mark, it's the midpoint. So the middle number on this class interval. Okay, do you get it? Now, let's have the fourth class mark by focusing our attention on this class intervals, the 75 to 79. So again, this is the lower limit plus the upper limit. We'll have this. And then, get the total of these two numbers. We will have 154. Then dividing it by 2, the middle number, therefore, on this class interval is 77. That's our midpoint, the fourth class mark or midpoint. Now for this next or the last class mark, we have to focus on this class intervals, 70 to 74. We have to add them, the lower limit and the upper limit, and then we have to divide by 2. We will get 72. That would be the final class mark in our data set. Do you get it? Nice. Let's have the second step. We have to multiply the midpoint by the frequency for each class and place the results in the fourth column. So basically, we are going to add another column. To get the value of this, you have to multiply the second and with the third column. So the midpoint is this, this column, the one that we added earlier. The midpoint multiplied by the frequency. So second column times the third column. So we are going to focus first on 7 and 92. We have to multiply them. Let's use our calculator to work faster. So we will get 644. So we write it down on our first row of our fourth column. Next, let's fill up the second one by multiplying these two numbers, 13 and 87. And then we will get 1,131. Right, let's write it on our next column, row. And then for the third, we have 16 and 82. Multiply them and we will get 1,312. Write it here. Let's now have the fourth. 8 times 77, we will get 616. Write it here. And finally, we have to multiply 6 and 72. We will get 432. So there you have it. We have created the last column needed for the computation for the mean. Let's continue. The third step is to find the sum of the fourth column. Okay, after completing this column, we have now to add them all. Let's use our calculator to add them all to get the sum. And that would give us, adding them all would give us 4,135. So let's write it here under this column. Let's name it as the summation of Fx sub m. This column is the Fx sub m. So we write the sigma symbol, the summation symbol in front of it, meaning we added them all. We get the total of this column. So the total again, that is 4,135. You get it? Nice. Let's now have the fourth and final step to finally compute for the mean of this data. It says that we have to divide the sum by n, or number of items in group data. So anyways, the sum that we are referring here is this, the one that we got on the third step. Okay, so we have to divide it by n. N pertains to the total frequencies. Okay, you have to add 7, 13, 16, 8, and 6, and we will get 50. Yes, that's the value of n, 50. And now, let's use the formula. Just substitute to this value, to this formula. The summation of fx sub m, as you can notice, this is its value, 4,135, and n pertains to the 50. So, let's just substitute them. We will have this, 4,135 divided by 50. Again, we obtain the 4,135 in the total of this column, the fourth column. The 4,135 is the total of the fourth column. And 50 again pertains to the total frequencies. Okay, let's use our calculator again to finally find for the value of the mean. So 4,135 divided by 50 will give us 82.7. So that's the value of the mean for this data. Now for the median, which is known as the middle number, middle value of the data, we have this formula. We read this as the LMC plus the quantity of n over 2 minus less than CF all over FMC times I. Okay, so these are the meaning of these symbols. Of course, the X tilde is the median. LMC pertains to the lower class boundary of the median class. N is the total frequency. Less than CF pertains to, of course, the less than CF. And the FMC pertains to the frequency of the median class. Let's dig deeper on this with our example. Let's now have the example for median, and we will use the same data that we used for the median earlier. So here again is the frequency distribution table with this scores, the intervals on the first column and the frequencies on the second column. So to find the median of this data, we have to first make a cumulative frequency column. Okay, so we have to add another column and let's label it as cumulative frequency or the CF. So when we say cumulative, that pertains to increasing or increased in quantity, degree, or force by successive addition. So successive addition. So basically, we are going to add the frequencies here successively. So what do we mean by that? First, we have to use the bottom number. We start from the number 6. That will be the first entry for our cumulative frequency column, 6. And then we have to add 6 with the next frequency, the 8. So that would be 6 plus 8. So we record the answer 14 here. Okay, that's the second CF. And then 14 would be added to the next frequency, 16. So it will give us 30. That's our third CF. So basically, we're just adding the numbers, the frequencies here, upwards. And then for the next is, you have to add 30 and 13. And then, you have to write it here. The sum would give us 43. And finally, 43 plus 7, the final frequency, is equivalent to 50 as our last CF. Okay? And if you notice, the last cumulative frequency that we got here is equivalent, of course, to the total frequency of our data. So there you have it. We have completed now the cumulative frequency column. Do you get it? Good. For the second step, we have to divide n by 2 to get the halfway point. Okay, so we have to divide n. Which is n? That's 50. Okay, remember we are getting the halfway point because that pertains to the middle value because we are getting the median, remember. So anyways, 50 is n and we have to divide it by 2. It will give us 25. Third step is to locate the median class in the cumulative frequency column. So we know already that 25 is the midpoint, okay, the halfway point. Now we have to locate this in the CF column that contains the quotient. The quotient is 25. So it should be equal or greater than the quotient. So 25, do we see a 25 here on the CF column? No. So in that case, we have to get a number that is greater 25. The first number that is greater than 25, and that is the number 30. Yes. So therefore, the median class falls on this class intervals with 16 as its frequency and CF as 30. We are now on the fourth and last step, which is we have to substitute in the formula for the median. This is our formula. And first, we have to get the value of the lower boundary of the median class. Okay, so again, the median class is here. We have marked it with the red rectangle. So what is the lower boundary of the median class? That pertains to the lower limit minus 0.5. Okay, again, so 80 is the lower limit of the median class. We have to subtract it by 0.5 to get the value of our lower boundary, and that would give us 79.5. So that again is the lower limit minus 0.5. In this case, we have 80 minus 0.5. That's why we have 79.5. Okay, do you follow? Good. Let's continue with the solution. Then we have to substitute n. In the formula, we have 50 as the value of n. So that's n 50 divided by 2. We just copy the 2. Then continuing the solution, minus the less than CF. The less than CF is 14. So where did we get 14? This is the less than CF, the cumulative frequency that is lower than the cumulative frequency of the median class. Okay, so we have 14 as the less than CF. Okay, now the F, or frequency of the median class. Frequency of the median class is this number, the number 16. Okay, so we write it in the denominator. And then finally, we have to multiply the expression by 5. So where did we get 5? The class interval, it came from here. So that's from 90 to 94. We can count. There are 5 scores from 90 to 94. 90, 91, 92, 93, and 94. Also from 85 to 89, we have 5 scores. And also you can check by subtracting the consecutive lower limits. That's 90 minus 85. So it's 5. Also 85 minus 80, that's still 5. We can also check it by subtracting the upper limits. So 80 minus 94 minus 89, that gives us also 5. 89 minus 84, still 5. 84 minus 79 is 5. So that's how you get the I, the class size or interval. So now we have all the values needed in our formula. What we need to do next is to perform the operations involved applying the PEMDAS rule or GEMDAS rule. Okay, so where are we going to start? Yes, from 50 divided by 2. So simplifying 50 divided by 2, we will get 25 because that's inside the parentheses, right? We have to do this first. Anyways, so we just have to copy all the other numbers. Okay, next we have to now simplify further. The numerator 25 minus 14 will give us 11, and then we copy again the other numbers. Next operation is now to simplify this. Divide 11 by 16. We will get 0.69. Okay, you have to use your calculator to work faster. Okay, and then copy the other remaining numbers, the 5 and the 79.5. Now we have only 2 operations left, the addition and the multiplication, represented by the parentheses. So which one are you going to do first? Yes, it's the multiplication. So we multiply 0.69 by 5. We will get 3.44. And finally, getting their sum, we will get 82.94. So finally, this is our median. The value of the median is 82.94. So again, the median score is 82.94. I hope you follow. Let's now proceed to the third measure of central tendency, which is mode, and it pertains to the most often value that appeared in the dataset. We will use this formula, the LMO plus the quantity of D sub 1 over D sub 1 plus D sub 2 multiplied by I. Of course, here are the meaning of each symbols. The X hat means mode. The LMO pertains to the lower class boundary of the modal class. D sub 1 pertains to the difference between the frequency of the modal class and the frequency above it, while D sub 2 pertains to the difference between the frequency of the modal class and the frequency below it. And finally, I pertains to the interval size. Let's dig deeper on this using our example. For the example, we will use the same value or data that we used earlier for the mean and median. So the first step is to determine the modal class. That means the number or the class with the highest frequency. So we look at the frequency column. What number has the highest value? Yes, it's the number 16. So therefore, this is our modal class. Next, we have to determine the lower boundary of the modal class. So how to do it? Lower limit minus 0.5. So our lower limit here is 80. And then we subtract 0.5 from it, we will get 79.5. So that's the lower boundary, 79.5. Okay. Now, let's proceed with the third step. We have to solve for D sub 1 and D sub 2 and also determine the value of I. So, D sub 1 again pertains to the difference of the frequency of the modal class and the frequency above it. So, this is the frequency of the modal class and this is the frequency above it. So, we have to subtract them. Okay, so we will have 16 minus 13. So, the value of D sub 1 is 3. And then D sub 2, it's the difference between the frequency of the modal class and the frequency below it. So this is the modal class and this is below it, the frequency below it. So that would be 16 minus 8. Therefore, D sub 2 is equivalent to 8. Do you get it? Good. And now, the value of I is 5. So this is the same, of course, as the value of I as we have obtained earlier because this is the same data. Again, that came from the difference between the lower limit and the consecutive lower limit. 75 minus 70, 80 minus 75, or 84 minus 79. That will all give us 5 as the value. So that's the value of I. Okay? Good. And finally, we have to substitute and solve using our formula. So this is our formula. We all now have all the values needed for the execution of our formula or substitution. So LMO, that's the lower boundary, 79.5. D sub 1, that is 3. We write 3 in the numerator and also in the denominator. Then we have to add the value of D sub 2, which is 8. And then we have to multiply the whole expression here by the value of I, which is 5. Okay? Now we have all the numerical values needed. Next step is to perform the operations involved applying the PEMDAS rule. So where are we going to start? Yes, with the denominator, the 3 plus 8. So that will be 11. And then we just need to copy all the other numbers. Okay, do you follow? Next, we have to perform or simplify this expression inside the parentheses, the 3 divided by 11. That will give us 0.27. That's right. And then copy all the other numbers. So we are left by addition and multiplication. Which are you going to perform first? Yes, you're right. It's multiplication. We multiply first 0.27 by 5. So that will give us 1.36. And then finally, we have to add 79.5. That will give us 80.86. So finally, this is the value of our mode. So the modal score is 80.86. Are you following? Good. Okay, I want you to try this. Calculate for the mean, median, and mode score of the data below. So here are the scores. And on the second column, we have the following frequencies: 1, 8, 8, 14, 7, and 2. So in order to solve for the mean and median, we have to add some more columns. Okay, we have to add the x sub m or the class mark, the f x sub m, f times x sub m, that pertains to the product of the second column, the frequency, and the product, or the class mark. Okay, so we have to multiply these two columns later, and the CF, the cumulative frequencies. So let's begin with the class mark. This pertains to the lower limit plus the upper limit divided by 2, the midpoint. Okay, so we add the lower limits and the upper limits, and then we divide by 2. So first, 41 plus 45 divided by 2 will give us 43. 36 plus 40 divided by 2, that's 38. 31 plus 35 divided by 2 is 33. 26 plus 30 divided by 2 is 28. Then 21 divided by 25, that is 23. 16 plus 20 divided by 2 is 18. So we have completed the x sub m or the class mark column. Let's proceed now to the product of the second and the third column, the fx sub m. So this time, we will multiply the second column by the third column. So that's 1 times 43. It will give us 43. 8 times 38 is equivalent to 304. 8 times 33, 264. 14 times 28 is 392. 7 and 23, that's 161. 2 times 18 is 36. And now we have completed this column. Finally, for the cumulative frequency, so remember, the cumulative frequency is obtained by adding the frequencies successively from the bottom. So these are the frequencies. We have to focus our attention on the frequencies, and let's start from the bottom. So we will copy 2 here, and then we will add 2 by 7, we will get 9. And then 9 plus 14, that's 23. 23 plus 8, that's 31. 31 plus 8, again, that's 39. And finally, 39 plus 1 will give us 40. So we have now completed these columns. And take note, the last entry for our CF here is equivalent to the number total frequencies here of our data. And of course, the I, or the class size, class interval, is 5, because when you subtract 25 by 20, that's 5. Also, 26 by 21, that's 5. Or even when you count the scores from 16 to 20, 21 to 25, and all the scores, it will give us a size of 5. So that's why I, again, is 5. You get it? Nice. And then we have to get the total of this column, the summation of f x sub m. So adding them all will give us 1,250. 200. Okay? And now we are ready to solve for the mean. That's the summation of fx sub m divided by n. So we just have to basically substitute this with the value, which is 1200, and then we have to divide by n, which is 40. So we will get 1200 divided by 40, and then just simplifying further, the value of mean will give us 30. Yes, that's the value of our mean. You get it? Very good. Let's now solve for the median. We will use this formula, okay? So the first step is to determine the median class. How do we do it? We use this formula, the n over 2, the halfway point. So that n is 40. We divide it by 2, that would give us 20. Okay, so 20 should be located, or we have to locate the middle point or the halfway point on the CF column. Do we have 20 here? No, so we have to get the number which is greater than 20, and that is, the first number greater than 20 is 23. So the median class lies on this row. Okay, now we are ready to determine the lower boundary of the median class, and that pertains to this, the lower limit minus 0.5. So the lower limit is 26 minus 0.5, it will give us 25.5. And then simplifying or substituting further, the n minus 2 here is this. So we have simplified it already. Let's use the number 20 already now. And then subtract by the less than CF. So that's 9. So where did you get 9? The frequency or the cumulative frequency below the median class. That's 9. Okay? And then for the FMC, the frequency of the median class, that would give us 14 in the denominator. And then finally, we have to multiply this expression with I. The value of I is the number 5. Okay, so we have now all the numerical values needed. And then again, perform the operations by applying the Penrose rule. So we will start from the numerator, the 20 minus 9, the ones inside the parentheses. Okay, the 20 minus 9 will give us 11, and then we just copied all the other numbers. Next step is now to divide 11 by 14. So simplifying this further, it will give us 0.79. So we just again copy the other numbers. And now we have addition and multiplication. So we multiply first. 0.79 multiplied by 5 will give us 3.93. And finally, we have to add 3.93 by 25.5. It will give us 29.43. This, finally, is the value of our median. Do you follow? Nice! Now, for the mode, we have to use the formula. Okay, but first, we have to determine the modal class by identifying the class with the highest frequency. So which among the frequencies here has the highest value? Yes, it's the number 14. So therefore, this is our modal class. I did not include the other numbers because we will just be using these two columns actually. So now, we can now determine the lower boundary of the modal class, which is this again. That's the lower limit minus 0.5. That's 26 minus 0.5 is 25.5. And then d sub 1. What is d sub 1? That's the difference between the frequencies of the modal class and above it, the frequency above it. Okay, so that would give us 14 minus 8, so 6 is the value of d sub 1. We write 6 in the numerator, also 1 in the denominator. Okay, so there is also a d sub 1 in the denominator. Then the d sub 2 is the difference between the numbers 14 and 17. The frequency of the modal class minus the ones below it. Okay, so 14 minus 7 is 7. That's the t sub 2. So we write it here in the denominator. We substituted it in the formula. And now, we have to get the value of I. That is still 5. Okay, so we multiply the expression by the number 5. Oh, now, next is to perform the operations applying the GEMDAS rule or PEMDAS rule. Where are we going to start? Yes, inside the parentheses and on the denominators. The 6 plus 7 will give us 13, and then we just copied all the other numbers. Then performing the division inside the parentheses, 11 divided by 13 will give us 0.85. Then we have to multiply by 5 will give 4.23. And finally, we have to add 4.23 with 25.5. We will get 29.73. And this is now the value of our mode. I hope you're still following. It's quiz time. So there will be 5 questions here and there will be a 5-second timer. Good luck! Question number 1. What is the class mark or midpoint in the class interval 98 to 100? So this is the class interval. Is it A, 98.5, B, 99, C, 99.5, or D, 100? Go! Time is up. The correct answer is B, 99, because to obtain the class mark or the midpoint, we have to add the lower limit and the upper limit, and we have to divide it further by 2. So we will have 198 divided by 2, 99. So that's our answer. Do you get the same? Good work! Question number 2. Using the data on the left, what is the value of n? So here, we have the heights of grade 7 students, the classes, and the frequencies. Is it A, 50, B, 55, C, 60, or D, 65? Again, you have to get the value of n. Go! And the correct answer is D, 65, because n pertains to the total frequencies. Okay, you have to add the 6, 10, 13, 19, 12, and 5. That will give us 65. Very good. Question number 3. Using the data on the left, which interval represents the modal class? Again, which interval represents the modal class? Okay, look at this data. Is it A, 45 to 59, B, 50 to 54, C, 55 to 59, or D, 60 to 64? C is the correct answer, 55 to 59, because the modal class has the highest frequency. When we say highest frequency, it's the number that has the highest value, of course, and that is 21. And its interval is 55 to 59. Do you get it? Very good. Question number 4. Which is the lower boundary of the class interval 80 to 82? So using this data, 80 to 82 is the class interval that we are referring to, and you have to get the lower boundary. Is it A, 79.5, B, 80.5, C, 82, or D, 82.5? A is the correct answer, 79.5, because when we say lower boundary, it's the lower limit minus 0.5. The lower limit is 80. When we subtract 0.5, you will get 79.5. You also get it? Nice job! For our last question, what is the value of d sub 1 on this data? So you have this class already, or the model class. So d sub 1 is unknown. Find it. Is it A9, B7, C5, or D4? The correct answer is D4. Why? To get d sub 1, you have to subtract the frequency of the model class by the frequency above it. So the model class is 9, the frequency 9 minus 5 will give us 4. That's the value of d sub 1. Did you get it also? Very good! To summarize our discussion, we have discussed the measures of central tendency for group data, and we have 3: the mean, median, and mode. And take note of the formulas that we have to use for the mean, for the median, and this is the formula for the mode. Take note of them. With that, I hope you learned a lot. Maraming salamat and keep safe everyone!